Before a woman can learn to remain calm, she must first be allowed to tell the truth. She has been hurt. She has been touched by words that were careless, by silence that felt like rejection, by glances that carried judgment, by doors that closed without tenderness. She has been bothered by comparison in the quiet hours, by memories that returned without permission, by people who mistook her softness for weakness and her patience for permission. And God does not ask his daughters to pretend otherwise. The Bible never teaches a cold-hearted strength. We were made in the image of God, created with feeling, depth, tenderness, and the capacity to love. We were not designed to be stone. We were designed to walk with the Lord, to know his voice, to live under his truth, and to carry peace that does not depend on the kindness of every person around us. But sin has bent the human heart toward fear, pride, control, and self-defense. It has taught us to react quickly, to protect ourselves loudly, to treat every misunderstanding like a threat, and to believe that if we do not defend ourselves, we will disappear. Many women know this life. They know what it is to feel a fire rise in the chest when someone speaks unfairly. They know what it is to rehearse an answer before the other person has even finished talking. They know what it is to explain again and again, hoping that if they choose the right words, the wrong person will finally understand the truth. They know the exhaustion of trying to prove that their heart is good. But, beloved, there is a peace deeper than being understood by everyone. This message, based on an original source, begins with a holy invitation. Breathe. Not because nothing matters, but because not everything deserves access to your spirit. Breathe before you answer. Breathe before you defend. Breathe before you let another person's chaos become your command. Breathe and remember that you are alive, that you are held by God, that your worth has not been placed in the hands of the person who just provoked you. To be unshaken does not mean to be untouched. It means the touch does not become your master. It means you can feel the wound without letting the wound take the throne. It means you can acknowledge anger without allowing anger to become your mouth. It means you can recognize disrespect without losing your dignity in the process of addressing it. There is a difference between reaction and response. Reaction is the old wound grabbing the microphone. Response is wisdom waiting long enough to hear from God. Reaction is fast, hot, and often regretful. Response is grounded, prayerful, and chosen. Reaction says, you hurt me, so now you control me. Response says, you hurt me, but you do not get to lead me. Ask yourself gently, who has been leading me without permission? Whose mood has been deciding the atmosphere of my day? Whose opinion has been sitting too close to my identity? What have I been carrying that God never asked me to carry? There are small irritations that become heavy only because we keep feeding them. A comment, a look, a rumor, a misunderstanding, a delayed response, a person who does not see your growth, a critic who does not know your story. The world will hand you these things and say, carry this. And for years, maybe you did. You carried their doubts in your chest. You carried their judgments in your mind. You carried their smallness into rooms where God was asking you to stand tall. But spiritual maturity teaches a woman to say, this does not deserve my peace. That is not arrogance. That is stewardship. Your peace is not a toy to be handed to every careless person. Your emotional energy is not public property. Your soul is not an open field for every storm to trample. You belong to God, And because you belong to God, you are allowed to protect what He is healing. Still, let us be clear. Calm does not mean accepting disrespect. Silence does not mean allowing harm. Peace does not mean you never speak. There are moments when truth must be spoken firmly. There are boundaries that must be named. There are doors that must be closed. But a woman rooted in God learns to do these things without surrendering her center. She can speak clearly without becoming cruel. She can walk away without performing rage. She can draw a line without turning her pain into a public fire. This is the beginning of unshakable presence. It is not loud. It does not announce itself every time it enters a room. It grows quietly, like roots beneath the soil. Roots do not shout, but they hold trees through storms. Roots do not ask to be seen, but everything visible depends on their hidden strength. God is teaching you roots. He is teaching you to stand in truth without needing to win every argument. He is teaching you to stop attending every emotional invitation. He is teaching you that your strength is not proven by how quickly you react, but by how deeply you are anchored. He is teaching you that some battles are not assignments. Some accusations are not summons. Some misunderstandings are not emergencies. And perhaps today, the first act of healing is not saying more. Perhaps it is pausing long enough to remember who you are before the provocation tries to rename you. Perhaps it is whispering, Lord, help me respond from peace, not from pain. Because you are not here to be ruled by every wind. You are here to be rooted. The original source draws a clear line between reacting and responding, and that line is where much of a woman's healing is tested. Because it is one thing to speak about peace when the room is gentle. It is another thing to keep your soul steady when someone touches the place that still hurts. You may have promised yourself that you would not react anymore. You may have prayed, Lord, make me calm, make me wise, make me slow to anger. And then, before the day is even over, someone speaks with the same tone that once made you feel small. Someone ignores you in a way that feels too familiar. Someone questions your motives after all the years you spent trying to be understood. Suddenly, your heart is no longer in the present moment. It is back in the old room, back in the old wound, back in the old fight. That is why reaction feels so powerful. It is rarely only about what just happened. It is often every unhealed moment gathering behind one current pain. The word spoken today touches the word spoken years ago. The silence today touches the abandonment from before. The criticism today touches the shame you thought you had buried. And before you know it, your response is larger than the moment because the moment has awakened history. But God does not shame you for having history. He invites you to heal enough that history no longer drives. A reaction says, I must protect myself immediately. A response says, I can pause because God is with me here. A reaction rushes to defend identity. A response rests in identity. A reaction is afraid silence will make you powerless. A response knows that silence, when chosen wisely, can be strength under control. Ask yourself gently, when I react, am I answering this moment or am I answering an old wound? Am I speaking from wisdom or from the fear that if I do not defend myself quickly, I will disappear? There is grace in the pause. A pause is not weakness. A pause is not surrender. A pause is the sacred space where the Holy Spirit can interrupt the old pattern. It is the breath between provocation and decision. It is the place where you remember, I do not have to become who I used to be just because someone invited me there. That pause may be small at first. One breath before you answer. One moment before you send the message. One prayer before you raise your voice. One decision to walk into another room until your spirit can speak cleanly. Do not despise that small pause. It is where freedom begins. Many women were trained to believe that calm means losing. If you do not argue back, they think you have accepted the accusation. If you do not explain, they think you have no defense. If you do not match the volume in the room, they think you have been defeated. But the kingdom of God often turns power upside down. Jesus stood before false accusation with a silence that was not emptiness, but authority. His restraint was not fear, it was obedience. He knew who he was before the Father, and because of that, he did not need every hostile voice to recognize him. You are not Jesus, but you are invited to follow him. And part of that following is learning that your worth does not need to be rescued by every argument. Your dignity does not need to be proven through emotional exhaustion. Your truth does not become less true because someone refuses to receive it. There will be times when you must speak. There will be times when love requires clarity, when justice requires truth, when a boundary must be named so the soul can remain safe. But even then, speak from the root, not the wound. Speak from peace, not panic. Speak with firmness, not frenzy. Let your words be clean enough that afterward, you do not have to heal from the way you defended yourself. This is not easy. Peace is not passive. Peace is practiced. Every time you pause instead of explode, you are training a new interior strength. Every time you breathe before answering, you are telling your nervous system, we are not in the old danger anymore. Every time you refuse to attend an argument that would only drain you, you are teaching your soul that it no longer has to bleed to be believed. And some people will not understand this change. They were accustomed to your reaction. They knew how to pull the string and watch you dance. They knew which word would make you explain, which silence would make you chase, which accusation would make you collapse into proving. So when you stop reacting, they may push harder. Calm unsettles those who depended on your chaos. Do not be surprised by that. Let it reveal what it needs to reveal. A woman becoming unshakable learns to value her peace more than the satisfaction of having the last word. She learns that some conflicts are traps dressed as conversations. She learns that not every criticism is instruction. Not every opinion is authority. And not every emotional fire deserves her hands. So today, practice the pause. Let it become a doorway back to God. When the fire rises, breathe. When the old wound reaches for the microphone, breathe. When the need to prove yourself grows loud, breathe. Then ask the Lord, what response will honor you and protect the woman you are healing in me? Because you are not being called to be cold. You are being called to be rooted. And rooted women may feel the wind, but they do not let every wind decide their direction. The original source says that acting unbothered is not about pretending you do not care. It is about caring wisely. And that distinction matters deeply, because many wounded women have been offered only two choices: either be consumed by everything or become cold enough to feel nothing. But God does not heal a woman by making her numb. He heals her by teaching her what is worthy of her heart. There's a holy difference between tenderness and emotional availability to everyone. You can remain soft without letting every careless hand touch your soul. You can remain loving without letting every troubled person make a home inside your peace. You can remain compassionate without carrying responsibilities God never assigned to you. Maturity does not steal your sensitivity. It teaches your sensitivity where to rest. For years, perhaps you cared without wisdom. You cared about every opinion, every mood, every rumor, every subtle shift in someone's tone. You could walk into a room and feel the atmosphere before anyone said a word. You learned to study faces, measure silence, adjust yourself quickly, and make peace before anyone admitted there was conflict. Maybe that helped you survive. Maybe it made you useful. Maybe it kept certain people from leaving. But survival patterns are not always sacred patterns. Sometimes what you call sensitivity is exhaustion wearing a beautiful name. Sometimes what you call love is fear trying to prevent rejection. Sometimes what you call being considerate is the old habit of abandoning yourself before anyone else has the chance to abandon you. Ask yourself gently, am I caring from love or am I managing from fear? Am I being led by compassion or am I trying to control how people feel about me? Have I confused being emotionally available with being spiritually obedient? Jesus was deeply compassionate, but he was not controlled by every demand placed before him. He withdrew to pray. He walked away from crowds. He answered some questions and refused others. He loved perfectly, yet he did not live at the mercy of human urgency. His peace was not built on pleasing everyone. It came from union with the Father. And if even the Son of God lived from that rooted place, why do we believe we must be endlessly accessible to prove we are loving? A woman walking with God must learn that not every interruption is an assignment. Not every emotional demand is a call to serve. Not every crisis belongs in her hands. Some people do not want your wisdom, they want your reaction. Some do not want reconciliation, they want control. Some do not want truth, they want you unsettled enough to forget your own strength. This is where unshakable presence becomes protection. It allows you to care without being consumed. It allows you to feel without being ruled. It allows you to discern the difference between a burden God has asked you to carry and a weight someone placed on you because you have always been willing. There will be moments when someone tries to pull you into their storm. They may speak sharply, exaggerate, accuse, twist your words, question your motives, or bring up an old version of you as though your growth never happened. In that moment, the old self may want to rush forward and say, "No, let me explain, let me prove I have changed, let me make you see." But the woman being healed by God can pause and ask, is this a door to truth? Or is this a trap for my peace? That question will save you many wounds. Because some conversations only exist to drain you. Some arguments are designed with no exit. Some people are not asking questions because they desire understanding. They are asking because they want to keep you defending yourself. And when you finally stop defending what God has already healed, you reclaim energy that belongs to your life, your calling, your prayer, your health, your future. This does not mean becoming unreachable. It means becoming governed by wisdom. It means you stop letting every small moment steal your larger joy. It means you refuse to let one insult decide the atmosphere of your whole day. It means you stop handing the keys of your emotional house to people who have never shown they know how to enter gently. Beloved, your peace is not pride. Your restraint is not weakness. Your refusal to react is not defeat. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is silence. Sometimes the strongest answer is a calm boundary. Sometimes the holiest response is walking away before your wound turns into a voice you will regret. And when you walk away, you are not saying it did not hurt. You are saying the hurt will not rule. You are saying, I have felt this, I have named this, and I will bring it to God instead of letting it make me smaller. That is not denial. That is discipline touched by grace. The more rooted you become in God, the fewer things will be able to throw you off center. Not because life becomes kinder every day, but because your identity becomes less available for negotiation. Criticism may still sting, but it will not name you. Rejection may still ache, but it will not own you. Misunderstanding may still trouble you, but it will not send you into the old labor of proving you deserve to be seen. You are learning to care wisely, to love with boundaries, to feel without surrendering your authority, to remain tender without becoming a target for every storm. And that, beloved, is not coldness. That is peace becoming strong inside you. The original source says that some things dissolve when you stop feeding them your attention. And that is a truth many women only learn after years of giving their peace to situations that never deserved it. Because attention is not small. Attention is life. Attention is energy. Attention is the place where your mind sits, where your emotions gather, where your spirit begins to build either peace or exhaustion. For a long time, maybe you gave attention to everything that touched you. A comment became a whole afternoon of replaying. A delayed message became a story of rejection. A person's coldness became an invitation to question your worth. A rumor became a courtroom in your mind. A misunderstanding became something you carried to bed, woke up with, prayed about, cried over, and tried to solve with more explanation. But, beloved, not everything that disturbs you deserves to disciple you. There are moments that ask only to pass through, but because they touch an old wound, we turn them into permanent guests. We sit with them, feed them, study them, give them names and reasons. We allow one careless sentence to rearrange the furniture of our inner life. And then we wonder why we feel so tired. A woman becoming rooted in God must learn the sacred discipline of attention. She must ask, does this deserve the space it is taking inside me? Is this helping me obey God, heal, grow, love wisely, and walk in truth? Or is this simply another noise trying to rent a room in my soul without paying the cost of peace? That question is not cold, it is wise. The enemy of your soul does not always come with great storms. Sometimes he comes with small distractions that slowly scatter you. A little comparison, a little offense, a little need to check who noticed, a little urge to prove your point, a little resentment rehearsed again and again, a little emotional fire that you keep warming your hands over, even though it is burning down the house of your peace. And this is where many women must become honest. Sometimes we say we want peace, but we keep feeding what keeps us restless. We revisit the conversation. We imagine the argument. We write the message in our minds. We prepare the defense. We search for signs that someone regrets what they did. We call it processing. But sometimes it is only the wound asking for more attention than truth. Ask yourself gently, what have I been feeding with my focus? What grows stronger in me because I keep giving it my attention? What would lose power if I simply stopped returning to it? This does not mean you deny pain. Pain must be named before it can be healed. It does not mean you ignore injustice or silence truth when truth must be spoken. But there is a difference between addressing something with wisdom and worshiping it with repetition. There is a difference between learning from a wound and letting the wound become the teacher of your whole life. God does not ask you to live with your eyes closed. He asks you to live with your spirit guarded. Scripture teaches us to guard the heart because from it flow the issues of life. That means your inner life is not a storage room for every insult, every disappointment, every fear, every person's unfinished emotions. Your heart is a garden, and gardens must be tended. Some things must be watered. Some things must be pulled up. Some things must never be planted at all. A woman who is learning unshakable presence begins to choose what she waters. She waters prayer instead of panic. She waters truth instead of accusation. She waters gratitude instead of comparison. She waters discipline instead of drama. She waters healing instead of rehearsing what broke her. Slowly, the landscape inside her begins to change. People may still speak. They may still misunderstand. They may still test her patience. Life may still bring interruptions, disappointments, and pressure. But she is no longer available to be thrown by every wave. She has learned that peace is not only something God gives, it is also something she must steward. And stewardship requires refusal. There will be things you must refuse to carry. Refuse the argument that only wants your reaction. Refuse the guilt that asks you to abandon your boundary. Refuse the comparison that makes you despise your pace. Refuse the need to explain yourself to people, committed to seeing you through the lens of who you used to be. Refuse the old habit of letting one person's mood become the weather of your entire day. You are allowed to say, "This is not mine." You are allowed to say, "This does not get my peace." You are allowed to say, "I will bring this to God, but I will not build my home around it." That is not pride. That is maturity. And as you practice this, you will notice something beautiful. Your spirit will have more room for joy, room for creativity, room for prayer, room for the small graces you used to miss because your mind was occupied with battles that never belonged to you. You will begin to feel less rushed, less easily provoked, less desperate to correct every false impression. You will still care. You will still feel. You will still be tender. But tenderness will no longer mean open access. Feeling will no longer mean surrendering control. Love will no longer mean self-abandonment. Beloved, choose carefully what receives your attention today. Your life is too sacred to be spent feeding every disturbance. Your peace is too precious to be traded for the satisfaction of reacting. Your heart is too beloved by God to become a battlefield for every passing voice. Let some things dissolve. Let some fires burn out because you stopped offering them fuel. Let some people misunderstand what your calm means. And let God teach you the quiet power of a woman who knows what to release before it becomes a chain. The original source reminds us that acting unbothered does not mean accepting disrespect. It means handling disrespect without losing yourself. And that distinction is necessary because many women have been taught to confuse peace with passivity. They have been told that being spiritual means absorbing everything quietly, smiling through every wound, and calling it grace when it is really fear. But biblical peace is not weakness. Peace is not the absence of boundaries. Peace is not letting people trample the garden. God is healing inside you. Peace is strength surrendered to God. It is the ability to speak when truth is required and remain silent when silence is wiser. It is the courage to address what must be addressed without becoming ruled by the spirit of the thing you are confronting. A woman rooted in God does not have to scream to be firm. She does not have to insult to be clear. She does not have to prove she is strong by matching the chaos around her. She can say, "That is not acceptable," with a steady voice. She can say, "I will not continue this conversation like this," without hatred. She can leave the room without slamming the door. She can close access without turning closure into a performance. That kind of calm authority unsettles people who are used to emotional disorder. Some people expect your reaction because your reaction gives them something to control. If they can make you explode, they can make the story about your explosion instead of their behavior. If they can make you chase, they can avoid looking at why they withdrew. If they can make you defend yourself endlessly, they can keep you trapped in their courtroom. So when you become calm, they may call you cold. When you stop explaining, they may call you prideful. When you hold a boundary, they may call you difficult. Let them misunderstand what your healing requires. You are not responsible for making your freedom comfortable for everyone who benefited from your bondage. Ask yourself gently, am I afraid to be calm because someone may misread my calm as weakness? Am I afraid to be firm because someone may call my boundary unloving? Have I been allowing disrespect because I thought endurance was the same as obedience? There is a holy difference between suffering for righteousness and suffering because you refuse to protect what God has entrusted to you. Some burdens are assignments. Some burdens are chains. Wisdom learns the difference. Love may call you to patience, but love does not call you to abandon discernment. Forgiveness may release bitterness, but it does not require reopening every door. Humility may keep your heart soft, but it does not require making yourself available for repeated harm. Jesus was meek, but he was not weak. He was gentle, but he was never governed by manipulation. He answered with wisdom, withdrew with purpose, confronted with truth, and remained silent when speaking would have served no holy purpose. His peace was not fragile because it was rooted in the Father. That is the pattern a healing woman must learn. Rootedness before response. Before you address the message, return to God. Before you answer the accusation, return to truth. Before you confront the disrespect, return to the woman God is restoring in you and ask, what response protects my integrity? Not my pride, not my image, not my need to win, my integrity. Because pride wants the last word. Integrity wants a clean heart. Pride wants to be seen as right. Integrity wants to remain aligned with God. Pride reacts to protect the ego. Integrity responds to protect the soul. Sometimes integrity will tell you to speak. Speak clearly, then. Say what is true. Name the boundary. Correct the lie if correction is necessary. Refuse the treatment that dishonors what God is healing. But do not let your wound choose the tone. Do not let anger write the message. Do not let panic decide the timing. And sometimes integrity will tell you to be silent. Not because you are afraid, but because the conversation has no good soil. Not because you have nothing to say, but because the person in front of you has no intention of hearing. Not because you are defeated, but because your peace is too valuable to spend on a battle that only multiplies confusion. There is victory in restraint. There is victory in not becoming the version of yourself someone tried to provoke. There is victory in letting your nervous system learn that not every threat is an emergency. There's victory in choosing to walk away while your dignity is still whole. Beloved, you are allowed to protect your spirit. You are allowed to be both compassionate and unavailable for chaos. You are allowed to forgive and still require change. You are allowed to love people without giving them the power to pull you out of character. The woman God is forming in you will not be easily reduced. She will not be rushed into reaction. She will not let every insult become a command. She will not call fear kindness or self-abandonment peace. She will learn to stand, speak, pause, and walk away from a place of deep inner agreement with God. And as she grows, she will no longer need to prove that she is unbothered. Her life will show it. Her steadiness will speak. Her restraint will testify. Her boundaries will reveal that peace has become stronger in her than the old need to be approved. The original source moves from acting unbothered into something even deeper. Unshakable presence. The kind of steadiness that does not rush to defend itself because it is no longer built on fear. That is a holy kind of strength, and it is not born in a day. It is formed through many small moments, where a woman chooses not to abandon her center just because someone else has lost theirs. There was a time when you may have believed you had to defend yourself against every misunderstanding. Every raised eyebrow felt like an accusation. Every opinion felt like a threat. Every silence felt like rejection preparing its case against you. So, you learned to speak quickly. You learned to explain before anyone asked. You learned to justify your choices, soften your boundaries, prove your motives, and argue your goodness into existence. And perhaps, for a while, that felt like survival. But survival is not the same as freedom. A woman who is still living in survival believes that if she does not explain herself, she will be erased. She believes that if she does not correct the story, the false story will become her identity. She believes that if someone misunderstands her, she must immediately go to work repairing their perception. And so she spends her strength managing images instead of guarding her soul. But God did not create you to live on trial. You are not required to present evidence of your worth every time someone questions your heart. You are not required to argue your way into dignity. You are not required to make every person understand what God Himself already sees. There is a deep rest that comes when a woman finally realizes, my truth does not become less true because someone refuses to honor it. Ask yourself gently, how much of my life has been spent trying to be understood by people who were committed to misunderstanding me? How much peace have I traded for the temporary relief of having the last word? What would happen if I trusted God to defend what my exhaustion can no longer explain? Unshakable presence is not silence born from fear. It is silence born from knowing. Knowing who you are before God, knowing what He has brought you through, knowing what He has forgiven, restored, taught, and healed. Knowing that your value is not waiting for a vote. Knowing that your life is not held together by someone else's opinion. That kind of knowing changes the way you move. You no longer enter every room scanning for approval. You no longer listen only to prepare a counterattack. You no longer sit in discomfort and scramble to escape it through over-explaining. You learn to stay with yourself. You learn to breathe. You learn to let other people have their feelings without making those feelings your emergency. This does not mean you become passive. There is a difference between standing up for yourself and constantly defending yourself. Standing up for yourself is clear, calm, and rooted. Constant defense is frantic, repetitive, and draining. One comes from self-respect. The other often comes from fear. One says, "This is the truth, and this is the boundary." The other says, "Please believe me, please approve of me, please do not make me feel small." Beloved, you do not have to beg to be believed by people who profit from doubting you. When God grows unshakable presence in a woman, He does not make her hard. He makes her grounded. She still feels, she still cares, she still grieves when she is misread, but she is no longer easily pulled away from herself. She can witness disrespect without absorbing it. She can recognize manipulation without performing for it. She can see chaos without joining it. She can say what must be said and then release what does not belong to her. Roots are quiet. They do not announce themselves. They do not argue with the wind. Yet they hold entire trees upright. In the same way, much of your strength will be hidden. People may see your calm, but they will not always know the prayers beneath it. They may see your restraint, but they will not know the years it took to stop reacting. They may see your silence, but they will not know how much courage it required not to return to the old pattern. Let that be enough. You are learning that character speaks louder than explanation. Consistency speaks louder than defense. Peace speaks louder than panic. Time reveals what arguments cannot. The woman who lives steadily before God does not need to chase every accusation down the road. She can let truth stand, even when truth is not immediately applauded. There will still be moments when the urge to defend yourself rises quickly. A message, a comment, a memory. A person who speaks as though they know the whole story when they only touched one page. In that moment, pause and ask, is this a call to clarity, or is this a temptation to return to fear? If clarity is needed, speak with grace and firmness. But if fear is demanding a performance, let silence do its work. Because unshakable presence is not about proving that nothing bothers you. It is about being so rooted in God that what bothers you no longer rules you. It is about carrying a peace that cannot be rented out to every passing storm. It is about becoming a woman whose worth is settled before the conversation begins. And that kind of woman does not need to be loud to be powerful. The original source teaches that when you stop defending loudly, something deeper begins to emerge. A confidence that does not need performance, a courage that does not need confrontation, and a power that does not need permission. That kind of strength is not the brittle kind that must constantly prove itself. It is not the strength of a woman who has become untouchable because she refuses to feel. It is the strength of a woman who has learned that her soul is not an open court where every passerby may place her on trial. There is freedom in no longer needing to prove your strength. For years, you may have thought strength meant explaining yourself until everyone understood. You may have thought strength meant answering every insult, correcting every false story, making sure no one walked away with the wrong impression. You may have believed that if you did not defend yourself loudly, then the lie would win, the critic would win, the misunderstanding would win. But sometimes the need to prove you are strong is the very thing draining your strength. A woman rooted in God begins to understand that every battle does not deserve her body. Every argument does not deserve her voice. Every opinion does not deserve a seat at the table of her identity. She learns to ask, am I defending truth or am I defending my ego? Am I honoring God or am I trying to control how I am perceived? Am I speaking from conviction or am I speaking from fear of being misread? Those questions bring light because ego is loud when it feels threatened. It wants to be seen as right, wise, good, innocent, mature, strong. Ego cannot tolerate being misunderstood, but a soul anchored in God can endure being misunderstood without collapsing. It may ache. Yes, it may grieve, but it does not fall apart because it has found a deeper witness than public approval. God sees. Those two words can become a shelter for the woman who has been falsely accused, underestimated, dismissed, or reduced to a version of herself she no longer is. God sees what was said. God sees what was hidden. God sees what you carried quietly. God sees the restraint that nobody praised. God sees the forgiveness that cost you. God sees the moment you wanted to react, but chose peace instead. Nothing righteous is wasted before him. So you do not have to make every private victory public to prove it happened. There are moments when your character must speak louder than your explanation. Character is slow, but it is powerful. It is built through repetition, through decisions made when no one claps, through integrity kept when anger offers an easier path. Over time, character becomes a voice. It tells the truth about you in ways an argument never could. It speaks through how you show up, how you treat people, how you correct yourself, how you keep your word, how you remain kind without becoming weak, how you remain firm without becoming cruel. Ask yourself gently, am I trying to win this moment or am I trying to become whole? Am I willing to lose the argument if it means keeping my peace, my dignity, and my obedience intact? That is not surrender to injustice. That is surrender to God. And surrender to God will sometimes require you to speak boldly, but it will also sometimes require you to stop wrestling with people who are not fighting for truth, only for control. Some conflicts lose power when you refuse to personalize them. Some questions answer themselves over time. Some accusations reveal more about the speaker than the one being accused. Some storms pass when you stop standing outside trying to argue with the rain. Wisdom teaches you when to open your mouth and when to let the fruit of your life answer quietly. And this is where peace becomes practice. You do not become unshakable because nothing ever touches you. You become unshakable because again and again you return to God before you return to reaction. Again and again. You choose the response that honors the woman He is healing in you. Again and again, you refuse to let another person's disorder become your inner government. At first, it may feel unnatural. Your old self may reach for the familiar armor, the long message, the sharp sentence, the public proof, the emotional performance. She may say, "We have to defend ourselves." Thank her for trying to protect you. Then remind her, we are not living there anymore. You are allowed to grow beyond the methods that helped you survive. You are allowed to lay down armor that has become too heavy. You are allowed to stop preparing defenses before attacks even come. You are allowed to move through the world lighter, not because the world has become gentle, but because your soul has become governed by a gentler authority. This is not about being passive. It is about being free. Free from the addiction to the last word. Free from the pressure to manage every perception. Free from the exhaustion of proving your worth to people who never had the authority to define it. Free from the old belief that peace must be sacrificed every time someone misunderstands you. Beloved, your presence can become a quiet declaration. The way you enter a room without begging for approval. The way you listen without preparing a counterattack. The way you answer with clarity instead of chaos. The way you walk away from conversations that do not honor truth. The way you remain soft enough to love and strong enough not to be manipulated. That presence cannot be argued with. It can only be felt. And as you continue becoming, you will notice that your calm becomes a refuge for some and a challenge for others. Some will feel safe around your steadiness. Others will feel exposed by it. Let both responses belong to them. Your assignment is not to control the room. Your assignment is to remain faithful to God in the room. So stand. Not loudly, not defensively. Stand rooted, stand surrendered, stand with a peace that does not need to advertise itself. Stand knowing that time will reveal what noise cannot. Stand knowing that the Lord is forming a woman in you who no longer has to be easily moved to prove she is alive. The original source closes with the image of a presence so rooted that it does not rush to explain itself, does not tremble when questioned, and does not raise its voice simply to prove it exists. That is where this journey has been leading. Not toward a cold heart, not toward a woman who feels nothing, but toward a woman whose inner life is no longer governed by every outer storm. Beloved, you are allowed to become that steady. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you who needed to answer immediately. You are allowed to stop rehearsing defenses before anyone accuses you. You are allowed to let some people misunderstand your calm, your silence, your boundaries, your growth, and still not return to the old labor of explaining yourself into exhaustion. There is a dignity that comes when a woman no longer lives as if she is constantly on trial. She does not need to convince every critic that she is kind. She does not need to convince every doubter that she is strong. She does not need to convince every person from her past that she has changed. She lets her life speak slowly. She lets her fruit speak in time. She lets God be the witness when no human witness is fair. And that is not easy. There will still be moments when something bothers you. A word will sting. A memory will rise. Someone will test the boundary. Someone will mistake your restraint for weakness. Someone will push against your peace just to see if they can still reach the old version of you. When that happens, pause. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your spirit deserves to be consulted before your wounds start speaking. Pause and remember, I am not here to be ruled by this moment. I am not here to prove my worth through reaction. I am not here to surrender my peace to someone who did not give it to me. I belong to God, and I can respond from that place. That is unshakable presence. It is not the absence of feeling. It is feeling held under holy wisdom. It is anger brought under discipline. It is hurt brought into prayer. It is disappointment named without being allowed to become bitterness. It is the courage to say, this matters, but it will not master me. Ask yourself gently, what would change if I stopped treating every provocation like an emergency? What would happen if I let God steady me before I answered? What kind of woman would I become if my peace no longer depended on people behaving gently? You may still need to speak. Speak, then, when truth requires it. Speak with clarity. Speak with courage. Speak without apologizing for the boundary God has given you wisdom to hold. But do not speak from panic. Do not speak from the old place that believes being misunderstood is the same as being destroyed. Do not let someone else's disorder decide the shape of your voice, and you may need to be silent. Be silent then when the conversation has no good soil. Be silent when the argument only wants your energy. Be silent when the explanation would cost more than it would heal. Be silent when God is teaching you that restraint is not defeat, but freedom. Some fires go out when you stop feeding them. Some conflicts lose their power when you stop personalizing them. Some accusations reveal their emptiness when you refuse to build your life around answering them. Time has a way of speaking where arguments cannot. Character has a way of testifying where explanation grows tired. So let your presence become your statement. Let the way you walk with God say what your mouth no longer needs to defend. Let your consistency, your restraint, your tenderness, your boundaries, your peace, and your quiet obedience become the language of your becoming. You do not have to become hard to become strong. You do not have to become unreachable to become wise. You do not have to become unfeeling to become unshakable. You can remain soft and still be rooted. You can remain loving and still be discerning. You can remain open to God and still closed to chaos. This is the grace of a healed woman. She does not need to be louder than the storm. She only needs to be anchored deeper than it. And Christ is that anchor. Not reputation, not approval, not control, not the last word. Christ, the one who sees what others misread, the one who knows the tears behind your restraint, the one who teaches you when to speak and when to be still, the one who calls you not into numbness, but into peace. So stand rooted. Breathe before you answer. Pray before you react. Guard the garden of your heart. Refuse to let every passing voice become a ruler over your soul. You are learning how to be bothered without being broken, hurt without being hardened, challenged without being controlled. And as you walk forward, remember this: the most powerful response is not always the loudest one. Sometimes the most powerful response is a woman standing in God's truth, calm and clear, refusing to be pulled out of peace by what was never worthy of her soul.